Well guys, I found a nice place to sit out here in the back pasture, and I decided to kickstart a new series that I'm going to be trying here on the channel called Homestead Talks. Now the idea for this series is it's going to be a little bit more of a podcast style video, so the videos will be a little bit longer. You're kind of encouraged to just listen along if you'd like. You don't really have to watch the on-screen video, but I will have some B-roll footage of the cows and the farm spiced in here so you guys can take a look at that if you're curious. But it's just a place where I can sit and kind of talk to you guys and share some of my thoughts and my ideas about things, and we'll see how it goes. So I hope you guys enjoy. So the idea that I had for the first episode on this Homestead Talk series is about changing values. And this is something that, I'm always really thinking about all the time. It's really a driving force in why I decided to come out to the homestead in the first place and start homesteading, because I see it almost feels like everyone around me has changing values as time goes on, except for me. And I know that that's not the case. I know that there are other people who, probably a lot of you guys watching this video, in fact, kind of think similarly to me. But by far and wide, in the general consensus of things, that's not really the case. And what do I mean by changing values or changing morals? I'd like to try to get into that a little bit today and kind of pick your brain. I always read the comments, so after this video or during this video, if you guys have a thought that you'd like to share with me, feel free to leave the comments. I love getting a comment. I love seeing what you guys think, and I always read it, whether I give it the little heart or whether I reply directly to it. I like hearing what you guys have to say about things. So anyways, changing values. There's a couple of things that I've been looking at and I've always looked at for the past few years, and one of them is the birth rate in the United States. Now, right now, the United States birth rate is the lowest it's ever been at 1.64 births per woman. That means for every male and female couple that exists, they're currently having on average 1.64 children, which means that the population of the United States would be declining if it weren't for immigration. We do replace the lack of births with migration, and as you guys know, that's a huge, hotly contested topic here in the States. But why? Why is that a thing that we do? There was a time back in the 60s where the birth rate was almost 4. So for every couple, there was about 4 babies being born on average. And you know what that means? That means that if a couple were only to have 2 children, then there was another couple somewhere out there having 6 because the average was 4. So kind of think about that and wrap your head around how wild that would be. Geez, they have shows on TV now that are like, what's that woman? The Octomom. Where it's like, wow, can you believe this mom has 8 kids? Isn't that insane? And that's like worthy of having your own TV series. But back in the 60s, the average birth rate was almost 4. So it was extremely common, or it must have been extremely common, to see families, with 5 kids or even 6. Because by and large, most people had 4 children. And nowadays, we have this hot debate in the States about all of this immigration. But what's really interesting, I think, is the absence of a debate where the framing is more of, okay, if we don't want to import people into the country, then why aren't we having the children? And I think that that's a very, very, very complex question to unpack, because I think there's a lot of reasons why people aren't starting families anymore. And we can talk about a few of them here today. I think that it's one of those death by 1,000 cuts type scenarios where there's so many small contributing factors and they all lead together to the root cause. Technology, especially recently, is definitely a big barrier to starting families, and it's something that's very alarming to me. It's an obstacle that has to be overcome, especially by young men. And the worst part is, in a majority of situations, I don't think young men know that that obstacle is there, or that it's something that they should try to be overcoming, because no one's telling them that. And what do I mean? I think social media and gaming, video games, online gaming, is definitely something that consumes a very, very, very large amount of young men in the United States, and probably Europe as well, in their teenage years and in their early to mid 20s. And a lot of these men don't have someone, a strong parental unit or a good friend or a close community peer that's with them saying, hey, you're 23, why aren't you dating? You're 25, why aren't you dating? You're 27, why are you spending, every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night on a video game? I haven't seen you dating a girl in quite some time, and that's just kind of considered normal right now. And I've heard a lot of young men say, and I think that there is a lot of validity to this, so don't get me wrong. I've heard a lot of young men say that, well, the reason why I'm not out there looking for women is women aren't the same anymore. We don't have the same values that we used to. The traditional male and female values where women really want to be courted by a man and they want to start a family and they want to go to church on the weekends. And, women are a lot of times on social media and TikTok and they're not interested in those kind of things a lot anymore. But I don't think there's any excuse. You have to get out there and try. For me, and I was definitely hooked in gaming, and I was definitely hooked in online culture a lot in my late teens and my early to mid 20s. And so it wasn't really until I was about 27, I'm about to turn 33 now, so it wasn't really until about 6 years ago that I really noticed. I was like, wow, if I don't change my trajectory, because I do want to get married one day, I do want to start a family, I'd like to have a home of my own, and what am I doing if I don't act now? Then those things will never happen. It was like all of a sudden I had this sense of urgency, and thank God for that, because if I didn't, then I wouldn't be here on this little farm right now talking to you guys. But I just feel so bad for young men who they perhaps don't get that sense of urgency until it's too late. Or they may never get it at all because there's no one there telling them to put these games aside sometimes, or to, put the social media down. And don't get me wrong, the way that you meet a woman these days is by and large through online apps, right? So I'm not saying to put the technology down entirely, but it's something that you have to do and you have to stop procrastinating on, right? And I feel like there's not a voice out there a lot of times telling young men that. So that's definitely one of the reasons why we have, this almost diminishing family presence, the decline of the traditional family. That's only one reason for it. But there's, of course, many others. Now, another thing that you see a lot of these days is people who they don't really understand, I think, a lot of times. And I must preface this because when it comes to this series in general, I'm probably going to say a lot of things that people disagree with. And hopefully we can talk about them in the comments. I hope that I don't offend anyone. But to me, a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about, while it may be considered harsh to some people, it's, objective truths that not enough people do discuss. And another one of those things is the biological reality of a human being. This is another thing that I don't think is discussed very often anymore. And that is, starting at about age 35, when a woman gives birth to a child, there is a exponentially increasing risk of complications, problems, defects. Now, that's not to say that a woman can't give birth to a child at about 36, 38, maybe even 39, right? That happens all the time. But as you go beyond 35, the likelihood of encountering problems starts to greatly increase. And so it's very obvious and it's very out there, but I think a lot of people forget sometimes to do the math on having a sustainable birth rate where the society is not sick, the society is replacing itself at adequate levels. There's no need to bring in, outsiders to the society. Because is that really the way that we want to live, Do we want to have a society where things are always, families don't really exist, but we bring in new people constantly forever to replace ourselves? It doesn't really seem like a very healthy society to me. So one of the biological realities is to replace the individuals in a society, you need to have a birth rate of 2.1. And the reason for the 0.1 is because, unfortunately, humans sometimes have complications. There's very, very, very rarely deaths in childbirth. There's very, very rarely deaths in the childhood to teenage years, or eventually people don't end up pairing up or having children. So on average, if you have 2.1 children, then the society will continue at a sustainable rate. So this is the number of the population is not increasing or decreasing. It's just staying the same. But in order to do that, if you're going to have a couple in the society that are having 0 kids, so they've decided that they're going to go child-free, and look around you, there's quite a few of those these days, right? For every couple that decides to go child-free, there has to be a couple having 4 children to offset that. So really think about that. How many couples do you know in the United States or in the West that have 4 children or more these days? Remember, in the 60s, that used to be the norm. Well, probably not that many. You might know one, and you might say in the comments, well, Justin, I know this one, my sister has 5 kids, and okay, that's fair enough, and they are out there, but realistically, how common is that? Because in a society that's, replacing itself, that would be equally as likely as a couple to have no children at all. And so one of the things that's most important to realize is if you are going to have a family, and let's say you decide, I'd like 2 children, or I'd like 3 children, when do you start? Because if you wait until you're 27 to start dating, if you wait until you're 27 to start looking for the right one, let me ask you this. What if I start dating at 27? I've postponed it, from 18, 19, 20, all the way up to 27. I start dating, and then the woman that I date, we date for a year, and I realize she's not the right fit. Well, now I'm 28, now I'm 29. Okay, let's get back on the horse and let's try again. When you wait that long, you're not giving yourself an opportunity for those unknown variables, because you may not always find the one the first time. You may not always find the right one the third time. And when you wait too long, you're not giving yourself enough time to account for those variables. So say I'm 27, I get into a bad relationship. Now I'm 29, I get into a bad relationship. Now I'm 32, and I get married to another 32-year-old at 33, because we dated for a year, 32 to 33. Now we're married. Where is your timing that you can have 2, 3 children before your wife turns 35? Because starting at 35, you start to have complications. You'd have to be banging them out back to back to back to back. You leave yourself very, very little room for error. And I think what I'm trying to say is, why did the average age of marriage go to 29? Because I got married when I was 28, 29. Why did the average age of marriage go from, I think it was about 21, around 100 years ago, to 29? Does that give you enough time? Does that give you enough time to plan your family accordingly? Or is family something that doesn't matter very much to people anymore? One thing that I noticed, and I am kind of rambling and sharing my thoughts with you, but when I was growing up in the 90s, I remember seeing a lot of shows on television. I remember reading a lot of books, and the books would say things like, when you grow up, you can be an astronaut. And when you grow up, you could be, a scientist, or you could be a rock and roll star, or you could be the next president. And those are all very nice things to say to children, right? I don't think it's necessarily malicious to tell a child those things, but whatever happened to being grounded, and whatever happened to practicality? Whatever happened to, hey, when you grow up, maybe you can take over dad's grocery store. Or hey, maybe when you grow up, your father works down. Whatever happened to having realistic expectations? And I think that children perhaps should be a little bit more grounded in reality. And there's nothing wrong with, shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll hit the stars. It's not necessarily saying to not have goals and dreams and to go out and pursue them, but whatever happened to keeping ourselves grounded in reality? Hey, a man and a woman get married, they make a family. You should maybe try looking at doing that in a reasonable time frame before you get too old. Careers are important, of course, but what's the point in having a career if you're going to be alone? And that's a real hard thing to say. But what's the point in, you've got all the gold medals, you make the 6-figure income, you've got the house with 4 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms and the nice Spanish tiled ceiling. But what's the point in doing that if you're going to be alone? What was it all for? So you can watch Netflix and Hulu? on your big leather couch? Is that what life is all about? Was that the end goal? You know, I got all this education, so I postponed romance and family. I got this nice job, and I put off romance and family until I got some promotions, and now I'm 33. I got into a bad relationship, and now I'm sitting on my massive leather sofa in my 4,000 square foot house watching Netflix and Hulu. Is that really what life is all about? And I think that there's a lot of different avenues and different ways that we can talk about something like this. I think religion plays a lot into it because the West is becoming less and less religious as time goes on. And I think religion gave people a reason, to a certain extent, to want to have families and to want to have, you know, traditional families. But that is slowly diminishing over time. But not everyone thinks that way, right? I certainly don't. And I sure hope that a couple of you guys listening don't feel that way either. So that shift is definitely continuing, you know. Not to state the obvious, there are some new trends out there of people living wildly different lifestyles. I don't think we need to name them all, and I don't think YouTube would like if I named them all, but there are some trends out there of people living wildly different lifestyles, and they would be offended by this conversation taking place at all. And that's good for them, I guess. They're free to do as they choose. But will things kind of shift backwards? I think they must. I think it's inevitable that they will, because we can't go forever this way. It's pretty obvious, and I'm being vague and I'm being open-ended intentionally, but I think it's only a matter of time until the pendulum swings back, so to speak. But what do you guys think about all of this? You know, what do you guys think about the disappearance of the family? Do you guys think that there should be more going on? Do you guys think that our politicians should be talking about the disappearance of the family? Do you guys think that we should be trying to raise more awareness about it on things like social media or even in our real life circles? You know, I think it's important to tell kids, you know, hey, when you grow up, you can be a mommy or a daddy. You got to work hard and you'll have a family to take care of too, right? That's what I was told when I was young, and maybe there should be a little bit more of that because it's common sense and that's just the way of things, right? So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a little bit of a different style, and God bless you guys wherever you are. And until next time, I'm Justin with Florida Homestead. God bless. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.